Good evening, everyone. Let's call this meeting to order of the City of Frankfort Board of Commissioners. This is our work session. Today is May 9th, and I'll ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Rosen,
Here.
Commissioner Unger,
Here.
Commissioner May,
Here.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Present. And we do have a quorum. First item on the agenda, ceremonial and recognition.
Mayor, I have one.
Yes,
I'd like to bring up May 1st through 7th was recognized as Professional Municipal Clerks Week. And we, of course, have a fantastic one here at the City of Frankfort. And where, of course, our meeting is this week, we wanted to make sure we were able to honor Shermay and everything she does for us here. So we were hoping to get a resolution extending that from May 9th through 14th as well as Municipal Clerks Week within the City of Frankfort and honoring City Clerk Shermay Maxwell.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. Do we have a motion to do this?
I'd make that motion.
I'll second
And
that.
a motion by Commissioner May, second by Commissioner Unger. Any discussion?
Thank you for all you do.
Well, maybe I could read, we might have a little discussion here. So, how about a resolution? Would you like to go down in front, Shermay, or do it?
No.
Okay. We have a resolution extending May 9th through the 14th, 2022 as Municipal Clerks Week within the City of Frankfort and honoring City Clerk Shermay Maxwell. Whereas May 1st through the 7th, 2022 was Professional Municipal Clerks Week throughout the United States. And whereas Shermay Maxwell has served as the City Clerk of the City of Frankfort since 2015. And whereas responding to hundreds of open records requests every year, to cranking out endless and ever-changing agenda packets, to helping every citizen, employee, and official with all their needs, and turning down the AC in the chambers. Shermay helps the city running smoothly at all times. Whereas Shermay comes in early, stays late, and goes above and beyond for the city every single day with dedication and excellence. And whereas the city did not have a public meeting during Municipal Clerks Week and would like to extend the recognition of this event to ensure we honor our city clerk. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the City of Frankfort, Kentucky, that May 9th to 14th, 2022 is recognized as an extended Professional Municipal Clerks Week in the City of Frankfort, and that Shermay Maxwell be honored for her hard work and commitment to the city. Well, it hasn't passed yet. Do we have any more discussion?
Yeah, maybe someone's not gonna vote for it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like to call, well, how about all those in favor of that resolution say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no opposed?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes, that resolution passes. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that very much.
Well deserved.
Thank you. So to get the rest of the week off?
Well,
You
we're
wouldn't
on
take
without
it.
that.
I would take it if you gave
Okay, let's say holiday off? No?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Any other ceremonial or recognition announcements?
Mayor,
Yeah, Commissioner Waldridge.
I just wanted to say a big thanks to all the teachers, as this past week was Teachers Week, for appreciation. So we appreciate all of our teachers and all the hard work they are doing, and just good luck to all those students who will be testing for K-Prep and different tests across our city and our county this coming week as our school year is coming to a close. So I just wanted to send out all the appreciation to teachers this week. Also, another congratulations, of course, to Wandale for being chosen for the Giants. And I appreciate you guys moving forward and doing a Wandale Day for him. And so I appreciate the city manager moving that forward, as we spoke on Thursday evening right after it happened at the Jazz Festival. So thank you guys for moving forward as I've been homesick. And another is the 2022 Martha Moore Preservation Awards that will be taking place on Friday. So super excited about some of those that will be honored at that particular event. And so that will be Tom Dorman, Eric Northcutt, and Richard Taylor. And so congratulations to all of them who will be recognized this on Friday, May the 13th for their accolades and things of that nature. So that's all I have at this time.
Any other?
I have one.
Commissioner Rosen?
Yes, the Bluegrass Theater Guild is performing The Feud of Bloody Breathitt at the History Center starting this week on Thursday. And that fits well into Heritage Week, which we're starting, I believe, on Wednesday.
Thank you. And tomorrow night, there's an open house for the Franklin County Women and Family Shelter, I think from 5 to 7 on 3rd and Murray. And a few of us will be there.
Yep.
I think, seeing no other announcements or recognition, we'll move on to citizens' comments. Do we have any?
I don't think we have any. Can you double check? I don't think we have any. I didn't see anybody. No, we don't have any.
All right. And now, staff reports.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First up is Rebecca Hall, who's going to give us an update on our upcoming ARPA grant and how the federal government is asking entities to account for it.
Good evening, everyone.
How
I'm
you
just
doing?
a muscle tonight.
She knows the guy. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on the ARPA funds. If you'll remember, in March of last year, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act, and all non-entity or non-entitlement cities were given an allocation. Ours was just over $7 million. We've got about 3.5 of that already that was in this year's budget. In January of this year, there was a final rule from the Treasury Department, and we knew that last year after we did the math that we indeed did have a revenue loss. Alicia did all the paperwork, all the math, so we were planning to take that anyway, but in the final rule, there was a standard allowance of $10 million, up to $10 million. So ours was just over 7. So we've had several calls with Department for Local Government, the Kentucky League of Cities, and also the webinars with the Treasury Department. And we have been encouraged to take that standard allowance. So that is currently what we're planning to do. We can take any questions. There will be a resolution on the May 23rd agenda. You're welcome to ask me any questions or Alicia between now and then. But I think it's just going to be less paperwork for us and for them.
Any discussion or questions? So is there a reason not to take the standard allowance?
No,
Absolutely not.
these funds can be used for government services, which includes pretty much everything we do. So, well,
Budget shortfall.
exactly.
And Rebecca, didn't we get recognized from the Kentucky League of Cities as being the only
During
city?
our
Yes.
webinar, yes.
They actually said we were one of the few cities that actually did show revenue loss. So I think there's no reason not to take it. It makes perfect sense. We've been encouraged to take it. So with no objection, that's what we'll do.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Next up, Kenny Hoxton is here, talking a little bit more of an update on the consent judgment decree and how close we are to meeting these long-standing goals.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to give you a quick update. So, as you know, September 2007, City entered into a consent judgment with the Division of Water and the EPA. Since then, the EPA has since dropped their judgment against us, and so we still just have our consent judgment with the state. Technically, we have met all of that. I have a memo written up that I will send out after this to all of you all describing that, but we are going to meet this week for the first time with the Division of Water to start discussions of how they want to proceed from here on out. We had had several discussions with the previous director of the Division of Water. He had given us a couple of things that we needed to do. One was our model, which we have completed now. So we're going to start giving them the results of that. Then we will discuss how they want to move forward. Technically, we were supposed to only meet 85% removal at the 2-year storm. We're currently at just over 90%. And with our current build out, the way that our projects we have in our long-term plan, we're going to be at over almost 92%. But we think that there's a couple more things that we can do to even capture that much more. One will be to upgrade our wastewater plant so we can push more water through there and not have to worry about as much down upstream, it'll get to the plant and we'll be able to push it through. So those are all things that we're going to be discussing coming up here in the near future. We'll keep you up to date as things change. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that they will, at the longest, they'll let it expire next year when it's set to expire. So we'll see what happens from there. And if you have any questions, just shoot.
Sounds good. I know it's taken many decades to get to this point. And it's
Yeah, we're
important.
about $68 million into this so far. So
Great.
it's not only taken a long time, but a lot of money as well.
It's good. Good point to be at.
Any other discussion or questions for Kenny while he's here? Good work. You're getting it this far.
We're getting there.
So
Discussing.
estimated when will we have satisfied?
That's all up to the Division of Water. So as long as we meet their what their demands are, we've met their numbers part of it. I'll say that. Now, if they want to add a few more, extend it out a little bit, I don't know. That's what the discussions are going to start this week on. Thank you.
Great,
Thank you.
That's it for the staff reports. We'll move on to discussion items.
Thank you. First up, Laura Ross will present a new draft ordinance for the Board of Commissioners that clarifies how telecom companies can enter the Frankfurt market.
Yes, so this is basically something, and I hope you all had a chance to read the memo where I tried to shorten this very lengthy 30-something page ordinance down to a few pages. This is something that has honestly been on the radar for several years. We are now hearing that we are going to have a new telecommunications company coming into the city of Frankfurt to offer various services, including high-speed internet services to businesses within the city. So they are wanting to be able to put their fiber in the city rights-of-ways. The telecom industry is extraordinarily highly regulated at the federal level, and they are given the right pretty much to come into the city and to operate their telecommunications services. The city of Frankfurt, in all of its existence, has never had a telecom franchise ordinance that applies to these companies and would set forth rules and responsibility for those that are entering the market. This company is going to come, and if we want to be able to put in controls, especially in light of all of our new construction projects, the Tiger Project, others that are going to be happening, if we want some controls over that to be able to make sure we have the notification we need, we have the construction plans, we have public notice, they present their plans to us, as-built plans, we give our approval according to the terms that we set forth. They have to, per the franchise, require with all of our local permitting, licensing, requirements, etc. There will be an $8,000 application fee associated with the franchise, as well as a $2,000 administrative fee that will cover some of the costs of publishing the bid for the franchise, which will be required to be done in the state journal. So it also deals with damages and responsibilities related to liability and anything that occurs of that nature. This is something where at the time, after working with our consultant, who is an expert in this field and has worked with many cities around the state of Kentucky, we have the option to either continue to receive the state telecom tax distribution amount. I just lost an earring, of course. The state telecom distribution amount, or charge our own local franchise fee. This is an ability that cities did not have for many years in the state of Kentucky, but in the last few years it's been reinstated. So we could do our own telecom fee, an actual franchise fee, but the amount that we receive from the state, due to the calculations that we've seen and put forth, is going to be more than any amount that we could receive from an actual franchise fee for the foreseeable future. But what we did in the ordinance was make sure we left the ability to charge a franchise fee there if the need arises and it becomes clear that it's suddenly going to be more cost beneficial to implement the fee instead of take the state distribution. But that is what this does. We would like to see a first reading at the May voting meeting. It's been vetted very carefully. I've read all 30-something pages and worked on it many times now, so I feel pretty comfortable with it. And hopefully we'll be able to get this in place, get the new company set up and ready to comply with the rules that we have.
Thank you. I think this is excellent that we'll have this set up, and competition will only help to lower rates. And that's what we want for the residents of Frankfurt.
Well, and if the companies are coming in anyway,
They are coming in anyway,
Yep.
regardless.
so there's no reason not to do this.
There is
It's
no
like
reason
that.
not to do this.
No.
They will be here with or without this franchise in place, but this is expected. Telecom companies do expect this to see the controls and the agreements and the applications. So this is our way to protect a lot of the investments we've made into our rights of ways and our infrastructure and still welcome new businesses.
And how did we determine the application fee?
This was a comparative study of similar cities in Kentucky. There's always a little bit of balance between those who actually do choose to charge franchise fees because they have so many coming in, and also comparing that to a reasonable application fee. We feel that this is a very good fee, a very reasonable fee, and one that is going to be beneficial to the city of Frankfurt. So it was a comparative study that took into account a lot of different factors.
Okay. And we can charge that and not
Mm.
and still get the state's franchise.
Yes, we can charge this application fee and the administrative fee both equaling to $10,000 and still receive the distribution amount annually from the state.
So this is sort of maybe like a future looking forward. At what point would we want to try to charge the franchise fee and
Sure.
not just the application admin fee?
Sure, I think that if we ever, and you know, we'll kind of have to see how it goes down the road. At this point, we're not anticipating a large number of telecom companies to come in and enter the market every year or every few months to the extent where, you know, taking those franchise fees that we might be able to charge would make up for the set fixed amount that goes up just a little bit, I think, every year that we receive from the state. That is a safe, reliable, consistent amount that we get. Right now it's considerably higher than anything we could expect to get with what we know about which companies are entering the market. And right now it's just the one. If though at any point we start getting more and more and more requests for interest into a telecom franchise, we will get applications, we'll take a look, and we'll say, okay, we've reached the point where now we want to forego the distribution amount. So we'll be monitoring that very closely.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, no objection, we'll
Okay? First
Next
reading.
item.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Next up, I'd like to call up Byron Roberts, who's going to speak, our solid waste superintendent, to talk about some proposed changes to our solid waste ordinance.
Good afternoon. Well, we have a few changes that we would like to make in the solid waste department in the ordinances. Some of the changes are just more clerical to make the ordinance a little simpler and to cover a couple things that were missing when the ordinances were changed in 2012. The first one is Chapter 50.01 in the definition section. Remove the definition of responsible tenant. We want to remove the responsible tenant wording as it will no longer be needed. Currently, we have a landlord-tenant agreement that is, as the tenant, you are responsible for any garbage fees, fines for the wrong trash that's been out compliance for more than a week. But the problem we have is we can send them a fine and we have no way to back it. We can keep sending it. Currently, the property owner we can send them a service fee, and then if they don't pay it after 45 days, we can go to the courthouse and file a lien against their property, which luckily in my time as superintendent, we've never had to do that. So that's one reason we want to get rid of the responsible tenant, because the landlords are putting it off on their tenants and not having no responsibility to clean up their own property. Because we do have a lot of property owners that do live out of town. 5002, the collections is to strengthen our ability to make decisions regarding the implementation of this ordinance and maintain the safe conditions for employees and equipment. This proposed change would also serve to eliminate the loophole for large multifamily dwellings. There was some the multifamily, we have 8 units or less currently on one lease or one plot. And there has been a few loopholes in there that some people owners have found to bypass it. We end up trying to service more. We've had a few calls lately, 16, there's been 32 total cans, and that's just a traffic hazard and just a safety hazard for my guys out there picking it up. It takes 15 minutes or so. And in another incident, we had units that would have been about 150 total cans. It would probably taken us over 30 minutes at one location to pick up all the cans, not counting if they had anything, large items. 5002D, the change to bulky items from regular trash collection. Instead of residents, we want to start charging a fee for bulky items. And currently, all bulky items, mattresses, household items are free, but we'd like to start charging. We are getting quite a few of those items on a weekly basis, no matter if it's a cleanup week or not. We would like to do this, that's attached, to change the move out fee or the cleanup fees from currently $25 to $50 with the use of up to 10 96-gallon carts, or $100 in using no carts, including large items. If they use the carts for the $50 fee, everything would have to be inside the carts. The number 4 is just change some wording references. There's a couple references from city bags to make it clear that it's city overflow bags. That way it's all clear throughout the ordinance. Also change free weeks to cleanup weeks. It has been labeled as unlimited pickup days and also referred to as free weeks on the website and some of the other advertising that we've done. And lately we have started changing it to cleanup weeks in the paper or Facebook pages as well. 5003A, remove the reference to 35-gallon carts. We're only using those now just for medical exemptions only. If a new resident comes in, we only offer a 64 or a 96-gallon. Then also replace the clarification on 5003-1. We assign one serial number. It just has the word A in there now. We also want to strike the reference to the container exchange fee of $50 and replace with will be determined by the Director of Public Works. The $50 fee at the time was what the cost of the carts were in 2012. In 2022, the carts are right at $75. We've gotten a little lucky on this last quote. They were coming at $64. We'd like to be able to have the price set at $75, or if it does drop down, we can actually lower it. Or if they increase in the year or so, we can increase it again without having to bring everything. Everything in front of the commission. If it goes up within 3 months to $100, we'd hate to come back just for that. 5003F, we want to strike out the words of the ordinance. Any place where the site of them will be a public nuisance. That was actually something taken out in 2012. That was just a miscue. Because you take a corner lot, if they have 2 residents around them, there's no place they can put their carts without somebody complaining about it. If they do not have a carport or garage, the neighbor behind them can see them, the neighbor beside them, even people driving down the road can see them. We do get a few complaints for them that they can see the garbage can staying out, and the time we go check it, they're up against the house. I worry about more of the can staying out on the street or the trash being out early than I would be somebody's can beside their house, just because their neighbor doesn't like the sight of it. It could be, which we do get a lot of, is neighbor disputes. They want to use that as kind of their leverage against their neighbor. 5004, the bulk pickup, or it's currently labeled as evictions. We provide two services, one for eviction as described, and we also for a bulk pickup. The eviction does not require waste to be properly bagged, bundled. We need to word it where they will be containerized properly. We've gone out, some days it's been 8 guys and 2 trucks, and it's been over 30 minutes at a stop, and it's just, then if we do try to leave it, there's nothing that, we have no ordinance to stand on. We tag it, then they figure out reading the ordinance, hey, you can't, you have to pick it up. That is one thing. Then the fee, the service fee replaced with, we wanted to have that determined by the Director of Public Works, because there's times the $50 now, I mean, it takes, we've had a couple stops, and I can send pictures later if you'd like. It's taken over 30 minutes at one resident just for just the piles of trash they're doing. 5005B, the loose material. We want to add the procedure and schedule for leaf collections to be set by the Director of Public Works. This is what we are currently doing, but there's nothing in the ordinance that states that. That way we have some more clarification on who sets the schedule for public work, for the leaf collection. 5010A, the recycling program. Just like trash collection, recycling collection will not be provided for apartments or condominiums with more than 8 units per lot of record. That was just a misplaced ordinance when we done it. Then the recycling program again, 5010B, provide clarification the city will supply 1 recycle container per dwelling, replace 8 with 1, and each unit will be assigned a serial number trash container. So that's just some more clarification on 5011, a statement has been added to clarify actions which require commission approval as currently written. The Public Works Director has authority to set rules, schedules, and fees, but every one of these require commission approval first. This is not in line with current practices. For the zones and schedules to collect leaves each fall and winter is determined by the Director, but no commission approval is sought prior to publishing and implementing. We think the proposed ordinance change will still require commission approval for anything that would financially impact residents, card exchange fees, violations, etc. I mean, we'd hate to, every October and September come to you. So we want to, this is our schedule. That's just more of a 5013 under the prosecution section. Remove $25 per event in paragraph A. Remove paragraph B and renumber paragraph C and D. The current practice is to cite the property owner and let the individual deal with their tenant. Also, the removal of responsible tenant from 5001 is no longer necessary. This is clarification. The garbage collection fee, add the word routine to paragraph A to prior to collection fee to provide clarity, and remove the price tag, remove the price 6 for 6 bags from paragraph B and replace with as set by the Director of Public Works. As currently, the bags that we're using now are $5 per roll of 5. The rolls that we used to get were $6 per roll of 6. So we would have to come forward, if they changed it again, that was just a issue with getting the plastic this time. One of the biggest changes that we really want to make, monetary wise, card exchange is $75. And if you need a downtown business in the Renaissance District wants to purchase a recycle cart, raise the price from $50 to $75. And the bulk pickup charges go from $50 with carts or $100 without carts, including large items. And I would say the biggest one is we want to move take cleanup week, from 6 times a year to 2 times a year. Do a spring and a fall. That would be a very cost-saving item for us. Because right now we're spending about $51,000 per year on the 6 free week, or 6 free weeks as they are. On our normal week, we spend about $6,245 for normal trash disposal. The free week is $8,549. So we're trying to limit the amount of trash and stuff that we are picking up every other month. It is taxing on the guys and taxing on the equipment, plus just the extra disposal costs.
And the cost of diesel.
Yes, the cost of diesel keeps rising. And the back page is just the bulk pickup information that we want to hand out to residents when they do the bulk pickup. It's just some clarification. We would reword it once it's approved, if approved at the meetings. Does anyone have questions? The bulk pickups were 3 weeks. Since 2012.
Oh, has it been that long?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep, in 2012, when he went with the card ordinance, or at the time it was pay as you throw, they started the bulk pickup items. At the time, we'd only doing, it was a $25 fee, and you could set out, 100 bags or just whatever. Then we slowly progressed into having extra cans that we could take to the residents, which made it a lot easier. And it keeps the trash a little more containerized and not such a mess on the street.
good, thank you.
It's a lot.
That's
Yeah.
a lot. That's a lot.
If you may have questions, feel
Yeah.
free to email me, call me. I mean, I don't.
Byron, I'd just like to add, I know a lot of this is just streamlining because there's so much in the ordinances and it just gives some authority to the Public Works Director who in her, best decision that they will make the appropriate changes and then anything that impacts people financially, of course, will be brought before the Board of Commissioners. But other little changes, the cleanup weeks, we're talking about leaf collections, different things, leaves it up to the discretion of the Public Works and gives them some flexibility on to do it when it's best.
So that does bring up a good point. We have a lot of weeds and branches and things. How does that fit into the whole scheme?
We'll still pick up yard waste on a weekly basis.
Okay, and you do that all through the year?
Yes, all through the year. When I have the employee help, right now I'm still short. I'm still short one employee, and I'm short a couple of guys that are working getting their CDLs. But I would have a brush truck out. The brush truck runs 9 months a year, from March to December. Then when the brush truck's not out, we still pick the brush up with the regular garbage truck. We still.
Okay, and so the brush truck normally takes it to a composting site?
Yes, we have a brush dump at the city farm that we grind up the brush collected from the city streets and parks and streets. Departments takes up there, and then the leaves in the fall that are collected, we dump separate, and we use that as compost, as a starting of compost.
And so that just happens 9 months of the year?
Yes, ma'am. But yeah, even the other 3 months, we'll still pick it up if it's out, but it will be in a regular garbage truck.
I see. And so that was December through?
March,
March, okay.
or March through December.
Okay, that's probably better.
Well, thank you.
All right.
It has been a decade, so that's
Thank
why
you.
that's a lot
Yeah,
since
Yeah.
we did
it
it. Right?
did.
We did
Yeah.
it once a decade.
Yep.
Clean it
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you, Byron.
Yeah, so is it the will to put it on for the first reading at the work session?
Yes.
Great.
We can do that, okay.
Yes. Thanks. And last item, of course, has the most interest is a report from the Johansson Group on our compensation study. I just first want to thank Kathy Fields for her leadership in working with the Johansson Group on the development of this comprehensive compensation study. I also want to thank, we had an internal team here, Chief Briscoe, Bobby Rippey, Kenny Hogston, and Sean Pickens, who also worked closely with Kathy. A lot of extra time, additional analysis, and all of our department heads have met with the Johansson Group individually and collectively to update job descriptions, answer questions, and work with us to develop what we think are the best recommendations to present to the BOC. So at this point, I will just turn it over to Blair to present the draft findings and recommendations.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Turn it up a little bit.
Let me turn, I turned my volume down a little bit. Is that okay? Can you hear any echo?
That's good.
Seems good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And are you able to see my screen okay? Okay, yes. Are you able to see the big screen? Okay, let's see. Let me, you're able to see the screen, the big one, and then this next slide next to it? Okay, All right, I think I've got that over on my right screen, so I'm gonna go ahead and just go with that for right now. Mayor and Commissioners, it's a real pleasure to be able to present to you this evening. We've worked with the City of Frankfort since January or earlier this year, and I've had the opportunity to meet with the city manager and the department heads and several of the staff as part of our process and work with the city. In this particular study, we're looking at classification, comp, and benefits study. This is a just kind of high-level draft report. I think you had an opportunity to receive some of our written report and exhibits. Typically, when you're working with a classification comp benefits study, you're primarily wanting to make sure that your compensation and benefits are competitive in the marketplace so that you're able to recruit and retain folks, employees within the city. And you want to make sure that you do an internal evaluation as well as an external evaluation of pay in the marketplace. Make sure that that's a competitive benefit plan to go along with the base compensation. So you're looking at the total package that the employees receive when they're working for the city of Frankfort. And then also just to make sure that the compensation plan supports the goals of the city. Some other objectives would be you always have this responsibility to pay as competitively as possible and yet make sure that you're doing so in a financially responsible manner, and that you're striking that balance between being able to pay competitively, have really good benefits, and still make sure that you have a sustainable program. And then also to make sure that the plan can be flexible, it can change with changes, either new positions or changes in existing positions. And then finally, that last bullet is to make sure that you're attracting and retaining talent for the city. Three-phase process. The job descriptions and ratings is the first phase. In this particular process, Kathy Fields and her team, in working with the department heads, worked to make sure that all of the job descriptions were current. And we had a total of 163 position descriptions that we put into our software system as part of the project. One of the end results is to make sure that your job descriptions have all the requirements, meet the requirements for employment regulations, and also that they're comprehensive and complete when we finish the project. And then the last item on this phase one is the rating of the jobs with the 15 compensable factors. This is a system that we've had in place since 1985, and we've worked with cities, counties, utilities, different public entities, private entities, and internal evaluation of each job description, not the person in the job, but the job description itself. And so what we want to do is to be able to evaluate each position description, job description, against the 15 factors that you're seeing on this slide. So in knowledge and skill requirements, experience general, experience management, education, initiative and ingenuity, mental demand, analytical ability, and problem solving. And again, what we're looking for is what's the minimum requirement for the job, because we're looking at this from the standpoint of what's the value of the position for someone coming in the position, and then their pay matures over time as they become proficient in the job. So knowledge and skill requirements, responsibilities for supervision, funds, equipment, and property, accuracy and end results, then your internal, external communication within the organization and externally with the clients, with the citizens that are in, that you're representing there in the city. And then the last three, machine and computer operations, working conditions and hazards, and physical demands. Each of those factors have levels that are selected and have weighted points, and that allows us to create a job value for each position. And from that standpoint, we're able to look at how each job internally compares to each other and look at where jobs should be placed within a proposed pay structure. That's what we call the internal evaluation. The external is where we go out into the marketplace and we're comparing market pay and benefits. You'll see a list of towns that participated in the study. And so we're looking at comparable towns. We're also looking at Lexington as a benchmark because it's in the Lexington-Frankfort market. And we're also looking at some published studies. So the Department of Labor for Lexington, Frankfort, and also SAR.com comp analyst for the Frankfurt market. So what that does for us is it helps us to build in the private sector to make sure that we're adding the private sector data along with the public sector data for comparable positions that we can benchmark for the overall study. We compared 104 jobs for the market salary study. We also completed a overall major benefits and other compensation study with the participating municipalities. For the market pay study variances, you'll see towards the top of this table that the Lexington Fayette County organization, the city, that when we compared our actual pay, City of Frankfort actual pay for 104 positions, we're 21.6% behind their pay. And then for the Frankfurt Plant Board, where we had matches for positions, we're 15.5% behind. And then for comp analyst, which is again the private sector, a little bit more private sector weighted for the Frankfurt market, we're 12.9%. And then right there towards the middle is where we have the Department of Labor, Lexington, Frankfurt. And the Department of Labor is all employers, both public, private, that are providing wages and submitting their pay data to the Department of Labor. And that's where we're at 10.6% on the median value. And then for Paducah, 6.8%. And then the comparable regional cities and towns, we actually went positive at 3.8%. The overall value, 10.6% on a mean and median basis. So we actually matched up from a mean and median basis at 10.6% behind market, which helps us to validate the data that those two are actually the same. Phase 1, internal, phase 2, external, phase 3 is where we bring it all together. It's what we call compensation administration. It's where we bring in the employee information and the market data. We bring those two together. This particular study represents 303 full-time employees. We took the 10.6% that were behind market and we used that value and the internal average. We took your internal average based on 303 employees and we increased that by 10.6% to create what we call a market pay rate or a midpoint for the range. So when we're setting up structure, we want your internal midpoint, being proficient in the job, to be a competitive midpoint rate. And then we use a percentage to create the minimum and a percentage to create the maximum so that we have a range structure after we complete the study and what we're proposing to you that's competitive to the market. And then as part of the overall process, we looked at the benefits study and some other staffing studies that were part of the RFP and provided that in a written report and some exhibits. This particular slide now shows a proposed 2022 pay grade range structure. That midpoint that you're looking at, where we're looking at grades 102 to 125, that's what we call the competitive rate. And then the percentage on each side of that for minimum and maximum. This now would be what we call a competitive range structure based on the market study. Also on this slide, we'll note that for part-time and seasonal employees, at a minimum, we believe the City of Frankfort should pay $10 per hour for the lowest paid parks and recreation positions to be competitive in the marketplace. The next several slides are actually going to take the proposed range and be able to identify the positions that will fall into, will be assigned, placed into those particular grades. And the range structure that was in the previous slide, but spelled out, there's and applied in this particular table where we're showing the different position titles that are associated with the grades. And that works its way from grade 102 to grade 125. So based on the structure, what we're doing now is to have some recommendations. We have a proposed structure that's competitive. We are able to see where employees fall within the structure based on their current pay. And so we're asking you to adopt the 2022 proposed pay grade range structure. And then as part of our recommendation is to be able to recommend employee pay increases that help to minimize or negate the 10.6% that we're behind the market mean and median variance. So in the second bullet, we're talking about a 5% across the board employee pay increase that addresses the historical below market average annual pay adjustments. Your previous, what we call COLA adjustments that were on the average about 2.5%. And then what this 5% will do is it'll help us to reduce the number of employees that are under minimum of the new pay grade structure. So 126 employees down to 71. This is being recommended for your upcoming budget, 2023 budget. The next bullet, we still have some work to do. It's about 1% of the total annual employee base pay budget to bring the remaining 71 employees up to the new pay grade range minimum. So the combination of those two would be 6%. In addition, we're recommending an additional 2% pool to help address pay compression for those employees that are in the first and second quartiles, trying to move up their pay as compared to a new employee that's been with the city less than 1 year, or probably about 1 year, or just walked in the door. And then the next bullet, we also want us to help make up a little bit more of that 10.6% variance to market with an additional 2% for your budget 2024, additional 2% across the board outside of a COLA adjustment to help with market pay competitiveness. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we're wanting to do this to be able to get you in a competitive position with your pay structure and also with your employees' pay. This last slide is basically a list of some other items that we looked at as part of the study. And they're bulleted here to be able to help you identify the things that we're recommending that go beyond the overall pay structure and the employee pay adjustments. Some of these are benefit related. Some of them are based on control, staffing, new and missing positions associated with what a city would have at this time going forward. So that's the slide presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions.
I have one.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosen.
Going back to the comparison with other cities in the area of Frankfurt, I think you said we were only 3% different from those other cities. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so for the other ones combined, the other regionals, it was 3.8% for the positive. So those were some of the other cities. They were comparable and a little bit smaller than Frankfurt.
So along those same lines, does that mean we're ahead of those cities, right?
Yes, that's correct. So for some of the other regional cities and towns, based on somewhere around 104 position comparisons, those were at about 3.8% to the positive compared to the other ones where we were behind market.
Comparable cities, E-Town, Georgetown, Lexington, Paducah, Paris, that you had on the previous slide there?
Right, so they're comparable, but they're probably a little bit outside of the immediate recruitment area. And typically what we like to do is create a balance in the study, so we're not just benchmarking the Lexington market. We want to make sure we're giving you a good balance between other cities that would be of a comparable size.
how do we factor in the difference between, or the percentage of jobs when getting the study together that are eligible for the public market versus the private market?
Say it again, if you don't mind.
When I was trying to find information about when we're comparing the jobs to use, to gather the data in the study, what percentage of jobs are eligible in the public versus private sector? What percentage of the jobs that we compared were factored into that?
Okay, so from the standpoint of looking at comp analyst is a primarily private sector, and the Department of Labor is a good mixture of both public and private sector. So from those two sources are providing data in comparison to the other ones that were on that slide. So let's see, probably about 2 out of about 10 overall comparisons would be weighted more towards the private sector.
I want to go back to my question again. On page 7, the market pay study variances. So on the comparable regional cities, towns, the plus 3.8%, what are the comparable cities and towns there? How many? And which ones? Are they all in state?
Yes, so outside of Paducah, the rest of them would be Elizabethtown, Georgetown, Paris, Richmond, Shelbyville, Raleigh.
So what's the difference between that and the DOL?
Slide 6, and it's everybody except for Paducah.
Okay, so what's the difference between that and the DOL, BLS, Lexington, Frankfurt?
Oh, okay, so all of those are the municipalities, and we actually ask for their data. So it would be their pay comparisons that they supply to us. So the difference would be actual data from those cities. For the Department of Labor, that's going to be your Lexington, Frankfurt area, and it's going to represent all employers, public, private, any employer that's paying a payroll. Reports that information to the Department of Labor, and then they provide a report by the metropolitan market.
I guess I'm confused. When I see this, the comparable regional cities and towns, it looks like we're doing better than the other cities. Is that right? I mean, that's what it's telling me.
We don't typically lose employees to those cities, and some of them are smaller. So we like to at least have some balance as opposed to putting all of our weight on Lexington, Fayette County, Frankfurt Plant Board, Comp Analyst, and Department of Labor. Because if we just use the top 4, then we'd probably be further behind than 10.6%.
Any other questions? Commissioner Waldridge, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I have one. I guess I wanted to. I appreciate this. I've read over this and looked over hard copies and discussed with city manager as well.
Right.
And just wanted to. I guess I wanted to pull out a certain group, which would be our fire department and our police department. I guess just as a group on how far are they behind as far as that comparable salaries for both of those agencies and departments, and also based on your numbers across the line, leaving out the plus 3.86 of the regional areas. I don't want to confuse that. It's a very small number, and I don't want to get that confused with our officers or police department.
Right. Good question. For the actual pay, we didn't separate them out as far as the percentage of how they are to the market. What we did do for the fire department, based on their 33 28 hours, annual hours, is we did a pay range minimum study to see how the fire department compares with about 11 other fire departments. And in that study, based on current minimum being offered, we're about 3 to 6% behind on pay range minimum, not actual pay, but what we offer when someone is coming into the fire department compared to what the other fire departments are offering. So that's a little bit different because it's looking at range structure minimum, what's being offered, as opposed to actual pay. We really didn't separate actual pay variance by department. We did an overall average variance.
So,
Go ahead, Commissioner Waters.
My follow-up was, would you also put our police department in sort of the same area in the way that you tackled the police department the same as the fire department based on pay range and maybe in the same percentage? I'm sorry, I'm ill, so if you can hear me, I'm trying.
Yeah, no, again, for both police and fire and all the positions on actual pay, we compared position by position, but rolled up the comparisons based on all 104 positions as opposed to making a separation. Now for the police department, we have a reference of being able to see what's happening at the state police perspective and what's happening in the market for the state police. And then we also have a reference on actual pay compared to for the overall study.
Thank you.
so one thing I wanted to add, and following up to Commissioner Waldridge's question, so we know in particular, when we first did the study and the 126 employees who did not meet minimum, of course, the vast majority were police, fire, and then some in public works and sewer. So then when doing the 5%, that raised up a number, and so we still had 71 who did not meet minimum. And again, a lot of those are public safety. So that's why the 1% overall of the salary total would be to make sure that those people, 71%, meet that minimum. But then that extra 2%, as we call it, the contingency fund, we know that that's causing wage compression. Because say you've been in your job for 3 years, but you've just now met minimum through this 6% or more increase, that 2%, which is 2% of our overall salary benefits, would be to address that wage compression in the first and second quartile. So don't think of it as 2% of my salary. And in fact, because many people, when you take a look at it and you look at the numbers, it's actually more than 2%. Somebody may need 5% to get up to that first quartile. Somebody might just need another $500. But what we're committed to doing is that suggesting this to the BOC, where we have those two steps, the 5%, and then that 1% just goes to help that next 71. That 2% will sit down with the department heads who are the most effective: police, fire, public works, and sewer. And then look at those numbers, look at where everybody is, the years in position. You're looking at that mainly. How long have you been here? Or you should be at midpoint, you're not at midpoint. And then address that individually. I would say that we would recommend that, and working on the budget now, the 6% that was presented, that Blair presented, and that 2%, we would meet with department heads likely in June. And so it may happen after July, could be July or August, but to work out that so that you'd see that initial, with July 1st, with the beginning of the fiscal year, and that additional contingency, it might take another month to put that, to address the wage compression that many departments are dealing with. And actually, Kathy, you should present overall, what does this represent? Yes. before pension. Is it 1.5?
Dollar-wise cost
Yes.
of the 6% or the 8%?
Do 6% and then 2%. Sorry, I just forgot it off the top of my head.
We were just kind of.
Well, you need to come up, should come up to the, if you don't mind.
So when you're talking 6% or 8%, you're talking about of our total payroll right now, correct?
So one way to think about it is that if we're 10% off, then take that 10% of our total salaries that we pay, and you kind of put that aside, 10%. So then that first step is 5%. The next step is the 1% to address the others to meet minimum. And then the 2%, which is 8% of this total 10% contingency kind of fund, that would then address still all folks in the first and second quartiles who are, you know, the new folks have just now met you, and we need to bump you up because you shouldn't be paid at the same rate.
Roughly the 10% is somewhere between 1.5 and 1.6 million before pensions. Our hazardous pension rate will be for this next budget 49.59%, I believe is what the calculation I've been using. And non-hazardous is 26.79. So for instance, for every 100,000 in salary, if you're hazardous, we pay almost 50,000 to KPPA and about a little over 26,000 for if it's 100,000 in salary to KPPA for non-hazardous. So you're looking at somewhere between 1.5 and 1.6 million. It's kind of funny. Kathy and I were back there. Oh, what's that number again? So I'd say with the 6%, we're looking at around 950,000 or so before retirement, and then you're looking at somewhere between another 310 and 320 for each of those other 2% buckets that Blair was referring to get us to roughly the 1.5 to 1.6 million dollar range before pensions. If I didn't already say that. So,
And that's an important consideration,
Yeah.
because the pension's big.
yeah.
So I don't know if that helped provide some additional clarification if you all have some other questions for Kathy. And
Now, I brought the calculator up so I could calculate while Alicia was talking, but I know that we put 310 for that additional 2, so I just did that times 5, so that gets us into that
Yeah.
1.55, you know.
So
right.
immediately a 5% pay increase, right?
Plus-
Across the board.
Plus that 1%. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
And plus the 1% for everyone too?
no.
No, that,
Just for the just to get the other 71 people.
Correct.
To the minimum.
yeah.
And then we're setting aside $310,000 to address the compression for certain.
The next
people.
2%. Yes, sir.
And you all will determine that? Who you got?
We are still, yes, what you just described is exactly what is proposed. We will be working with the department heads on the allocation for the remaining, like, $310,000, which is the remaining 2%.
And then for fiscal year 24, another 300,000 or so to then address any remaining issues that we may have. It's just very difficult to do all this in one budget. It's a lot of money, and we're trying to, obviously do the best we can do. And that's what some of the things I've been working on with Laura for the last week or so, since we got some of these more final numbers for the comp study.
Once the pensions are added, it's well over $2 million, well over.
Yeah.
Well, let me do a
it's
rough,
definitely-
let's do a rough yeah.
And just to again clarify, when you were just talking about it, Mayor, the 1%, it was just to bring people up. That 2% will not be spread across all the departments, because not all the departments are experiencing what basically police, fire, and some in public works and sewer are experiencing. And we're really focused on the people in the first and the second quartile who are getting paid lower. So it's not 2% equally across the whole city. It's just going to be focused on the people who are, for their years in position, experience, are still not at the competitive level. So we want to make them competitive.
I appreciate the way that they approach this, because rather than just say a blanket percentage for everyone with the 1.5 million or so that we need to get the 10%, we're being very strategic with it and allowing department heads to take a look at who really needs to have those increases, and it's not just across the board. So obviously the 5% will be across the board because, you know, we want to give a COLA, and this actually is a little bit more than what our normal COLA would have been, you know, our history of our COLAs. So I do think it's a good method, and it helps to get some of our folks up to at least that minimum amount that they need to be at in order to be more competitive. So.
We know that it's a high inflation year, so a richer COLA than has been kind of our historical precedent makes some sense to us. And as we worked with Blair across the board, that impacts everybody. But then when we start to look at further allocation to become very targeted about where we really see that data is representing an underpayment to employees. And I heard all of you kind of asking, trying to determine how much of this is private sector, how much of this is public sector, and I was sensing it might be, what's our apples to apples comparison? But one of the things I want to say I think is really important is it's not so much just comparing ourselves against other comparable municipalities where we might be slightly better. Those are not really our competitors. People aren't driving 2 miles where we might be 3% better. They're driving within 45 minutes. So I think that those are our real competitors. And that's what that, like the comp data or the Bureau of Labor Statistics is, in my mind, showing the real competition unless people are actually going to move and change their home and everything. So I think that comparison against comparable sized cities certainly has value, but I don't see that that's as much where we're losing our people to. And that's why I think like some of that higher increase is needed.
And Kathy, maybe you want to speak to a little bit. There is some suggested changes, and we'll, talk about this more in depth, but how people move up between these quartiles. Because one of the things we know here at the city is that we have not adjusted our policies, attraction, retention to address the changes in the pension. So we all know that Tier 1 folks, great, they're set. Tier 2 has it pretty good. Tier 3, it's a completely different system. And we don't want to lose good people that we've recruited and have trained after 3 years. You've done your contract, you're done. We need to change how we attract and retain people. So we're looking at how, and this is in line with what Kentucky State Police are doing, is that for people starting out, they need to move up faster. If we want to keep people longer, we need to move them up faster. And then later on, there's probably a slower growth rate because in our analysis of people leaving the city, majority of the people are leaving in less than 5 years, 6 years. So we've trained these people, we've spent the time and the money and invested, and they're gone. We need to keep those good people. So we need to change how we operate that way to attract and then incentivize people to stay. Because once people stay beyond 7 to 10 years, they're likely they could stay longer. But we don't want them to leave after 3 years. So the city has to adjust organizationally what we do. And in fiscal year 23, Kathy and I have already started speaking about how we look at some of the incentives and pay or reward, different things for making it a good place to live, but also knowing that we need to change how we operate because of the changes in the pension system to reward people earlier on.
Did you want me to speak to some of the pension stuff? I can.
No, it was the one. How is you knew about the quartiles moving up? It was 12, 10, 5, or something. How is that percentage you were talking about and moving up between the pay grades?
If I'm understanding the question, so it's a little different if you're HAZ or non-HAZ. So as the structure was developed, if you're hazardous, a quartile is representing 5 years of service. So over 4 quartiles, you've spent 20 years of service. If you're non-HAZ, it's representing 6 years per quartile. Is that what you were getting at? So it's really a 24-year span versus a 20, depending on if you're hazardous or non-hazardous.
But the difference between when we've done steps previously, when we did 369 and you were looking at
Oh.
different.
So we currently have in our ordinance a salary schedule that has a lot of pay grades, more than the new proposed schedule has. So a pay grade usually represents a 3% increase. So we don't have as many pay grades in the newer schedule. And the first pay grade that a person jumps would represent a 5% jump versus a 3% jump, if that's,
Yeah.
am I touching on the right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because
Yeah,
one of
so-
the things we found, we have so many steps, it takes people a long time to get through their pay grade and with their years of experience. So as part of that attraction is that moving up people faster earlier on to reach. I mean, most people want to reach, if you're in your midpoint of your career, you want to make sure that you're getting paid that way. But for us, we're taking too long for our staff to get there. So we want to look at earlier, moving up faster to get to where that midpoint competitiveness should be.
Sorry, I think I wasn't tracking with kind of what you were thinking of, but I'll use an example in Public Works. In the first 3 years of their employment, there's a really rich pay increase structure, but we start them crazy low. And so by the time they hit 3 years, they've gotten a COLA, they've gotten longevity, they've gotten reclassified twice. And so they finally hit that point where we're kind of in the running. But it took them 3 years to get there. So one of the things we're trying to do is, in those 3 years, not only does it include COLAs, but they have one reclassification that's worth 3%, another that's worth 12%. So they have 15% of reclassifications in their first 3 years, plus their COLAs and longevity. So, but we're really lagging on the front end. So by the time they've been here for 3 years, now we're in the hunt and we're getting the pay more where it needs to be. So what we're kind of looking at is maybe we don't go through all of these levels to finally get competitive. Maybe we just start competitive.
Okay, one more question. So on the 1% for the 71 people, is there a plan? How are we going to divvy that up? So if it's 150,000 approximately,
Yeah, it is actually. And
is that equally, or is that just?
that is to get people to their minimum. So it will not necessarily be the same amount. One person might be missing, after they get the 5%, which isn't across the board, one person might be missing the minimum by, $700. Another person might be missing it by, 1,000. So the next step really with the 1%, that's how much more it's costing the city to get everybody into their band, into the new minimum, which is a new pay structure that is designed to be more competitive. So it's all these bands went forward at higher dollar values. The 2% now that we're working with department heads on allocation is to discuss where, oh wow, one person moved up to band and they got 700, another got 1,400. So now we've compressed. So that person who only got 700 to move into band is probably going to be one who's a big candidate to dip into the 2%. So we keep some spread.
Do we know how many employees that 2% bucket will affect?
I don't have a firm count on that, but it is definitely not our full workforce. This is gonna be kind of from what I've seen so far, and Laura's mentioned it too. It looks like the heavier pulls are going to come from police, fire, and then to a lesser extent, sewer and public works. But police and fire are large departments. So just kind of grabbing a number, I'm going to say maybe 45%, maybe.
Police and fire, no, I think it's higher than that.
Let's say higher.
50?
Yeah, it's much higher
If you
than
put them
that.
both together.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I can't
well,
say
no,
the
if you put
number.
them both together, we're looking at like 140, and we're at 3, so it's like half, and so.
And then there are also a few employees here and there that there might be some of that as well. It's the majority in those departments, but I do know there are other employees that we have that issue as well, but it's to a way lesser extent, so. Yeah.
So, okay. To make sure I'm fully understanding. So we're shooting for 5% July 1st, and then this 1% that we were just talking about is are we shooting for July 1st with the 1%? Okay, also. And then the 2%, what time frame do you think we need to figure that out if we agree with moving forward with this structure?
I think that's achievable. Typically, it's not really a hard calendar date. It's the first payroll in July, because we'll look at how our pay periods run. So the first time we run a full payroll in July is often when we first cut in that pay increase. So it may not be exactly July 1st. It could catch a little bit of June. But based on the rate at which we're working so far, I would think in August we should be able to have had enough discussion with department heads to understand any additional allocation to work through that. They're actually not here to totally speak for them, but we've already started a lot of this work. So I
Right.
think we're pretty far along.
I appreciate this approach. I think it's great.
So we don't need to have those budget meetings next week, correct?
No.
I'm just joking.
Maybe just one.
Thank
All right,
you.
any other discussion or questions? That's good.
I think this is an important thing to be looking at because our employees for the city are our most important asset, and we want to keep the ones that are doing a good job. So certainly, this is important.
Can I touch on one more thing? I did appreciate all of the extra, benefits that were included and the breakdown of what all those could be. Paid family leave was listed, while I disagree with some of the comment on starting with less of a time period, but that's something I can discuss later. Thank you.
So can we bring this forward at the voting session to adopt before the budget?
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to action items. None listed. I don't think we have anything to take action on, right, besides the resolution. Moving on to the discussion of tentative agenda for next time. Let's see, I have solid waste ordinance, telecom ordinance, the ARPA standard allowance resolution. We're gonna adopt the 2022 pay structure that we just discussed. Any other? We have time, we have time. All right, and moving on to unfinished business from last meeting.
Is Byron still here?
He left.
Oh, okay. I just had some questions about recycling, which you should have asked earlier, but it didn't seem to fit then.
Let's keep that. Any other unfinished business?
Well, I know one thing that comes up with people in Walk Bike Frankfurt is calming on Capitol Avenue.
We'll
And-
talk about that new business.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. forget
We're
that.
in a new business.
Oh,
then.
we are now?
We are
Okay.
now.
And I know that we have a number of priorities and things we're trying to do with streets and making it a friendly place for bicycling and walking, and almost everyone seems to have a dog when I'm out. And maybe adding some crosswalks, just some very inexpensive things. And that's something that I'm not sure where it fits into our priorities of what to do when, but it's something I know that I hear about from residents. So I want to bring that up.
I've heard the same, and I've met with a couple of them too about that, so. Maybe we could put that on the next work session to discuss.
Yeah.
Sounds
great.
good.
Commissioner Waters?
Well, I was going to ask for that to be put on the next agenda, so for us to discuss that, or work session is fine. So thank you. But also wanted to add that if I'm not mistaken, I want to say maybe May, we may have some more park board members coming up, maybe in the next little bit to be reappointed or to find others. I'd been speaking with Ms. Ross in discussion of how we can get more people involved in our Parks Board, because we do have a lot of things ahead with Sean going on with the Parks Master Plan and things of that nature. So it's near and dear to my heart. It is one of our, I think our greatest assets is our Parks Department. And with that being said, I think that since we own basically 95% of all parks, just the one park is the county, that it would only be right to open up a couple of positions on our city Parks Board for people that live in the county to serve on our Parks Board as well. I spoke with Ms. Ross, and she did some research on that for me and did not see that it would be a problem. That would just be something on behalf of our board that we would want to see done and move forward. I think it would open up our selection. And I just think that having people in our county on this board is appropriate, in that most of the parks that everyone in Franklin County and the city of Frankfort use is all of our city parks. And so I think that we have some good voices out there that would like to serve on that. However, it's always been the idea of only city people to be on this board. And I just hope that we can open that up and allow others to apply that live outside the city limits, who however use our city parks all the time, and give them an opportunity to submit an application to be part of our Parks Board in the near future.
We'll definitely discuss that. Any other new business? No, we'll definitely put that on an item for discussion.
I appreciate that. And we want to make sure that we put it on for discussion, and that we give notice and let people know that, you know, if that's something that our board sees fit, that we move forward to let people know that they can't apply before it's too late, and that decision is made.
One thing I like to add, Commissioner Waldridge, is true that we're thinking of some other ideas of how we also advertise to people across the city, different ways to get more people to serve on our boards, whether it's the junior, the Chamber of Commerce, young professionals, reaching out to churches, reaching out to other areas to make sure we have a good, diverse group who are serving on our boards.
I really agree, and I think one step forward that we can take is, if we know that so many positions are coming up, let's say in June, then we need to make sure that we're making that announcement at least a month or two in advance, saying these are coming available. Blair does a great job in putting things out on our website as well. And so I'm sure we could do that, put in the State Journal and things of that nature, and word of mouth on Facebook. It seems that our website and Facebook page are updated consistently, and more people are navigating toward those resources to keep up with the city. And I just want that to continue, where more people can be involved and know what's going on. So thank you.
Sounds good. Any other new business? All right. Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to move us to executive session per KRS 61.8101C, litigation related to Kyle Thompson. Action may be taken in open session.
Second.
All right, motion to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're now going to executive session. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
All right, we're now back in open session, and no action will be taken. Now, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion to adjourn, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. All right, see you next time.